Just talk about your time.
I can go high to low.
What is going on, guys? Nico Sharp here, along for another Sharp segments. This one's gonna be UFC edition. We're gonna be covering UFC 308 with the headliner Max Holloway versus Illia Topuria. Have a special guest alongside with me. We have Mr. CJ Sharp joining me here as well, the man who got me into UFC. CJ, tell us who you are.
I'm CJ. No, so CJ Sharp, Nico's older brother. Yeah, I don't know where to even start this. What qualifies me to have a take on MMA? Absolutely nothing. Just a regular old fan. I got into the UFC by complete accident. I think it was about 06, 07 maybe, around the time of the very first Ultimate Fighter. Literally came down to me just having a limited cable plan, and it was something that was on, looked interesting. Forrest Griffin was out, that was the big thing, and Stephen Bonner. I want to say Nate Diaz was on that season too, but anyway, this was about the time. It wasn't the big thing it is today. It just seemed interesting, and it seemed different, and it seemed like a good time to get into something. I was never really a big boxing fan, I could say. Boxing is cool and it's fine. But I felt like I was already kind of left in the dust, and so it kind of felt, I think what kind of drew me to it, it was so new and fresh, and I was like, okay, I could get behind this and kind of, grow with it, and, without knowing, again, it was going to become what it actually did or what it is today. But, so just, I wouldn't say lifelong, but, I was there pretty early on.
Yeah.
I feel like I vaguely remember people talking about it, because nowadays you hear what it used to be like with the Gracie stuff and all that. I didn't know it well back then. I might have seen, I can't even say a clip, right? We didn't have clips back then.
Right,
but
right.
I might have came across it somehow or another. Right. And, it was on Spike TV. Like I said, that's just what I could watch at the time. So I did, and I got, kind of got hooked, and, here we are.
Yeah, you talked about it a little bit before we even get to this main card. You talked about watching the sport grow. If you watch from 2006, you watched on Fox, and now it's on ESPN. It's kind of the minority at the beginning, and now, it seems like it's talked about amongst a way bigger crowd. You talk about all these events, and during that COVID time, there's a huge switch. So what has that journey been like for you, watching the sport just continue to grow into what it is today, like you mentioned?
It's been fun. It's been fun because now there's people that you could randomly have these, impromptu conversations with UFC about, and a part of it still feels like, this is mine, like, hey, why is it so popular now, because back then it was so foreign and it was stupid and it was never going to be, we talk about it even coming up with Pops, and Pops being involved and thinking that it was silly and trash and that's not real fighting. Grandpa Mike, rest in peace, Grandpa Mike. He was another one, it was too new for that generation, And so it took a while for it to get the respect that it has now. It's still not all the way there, but it's definitely more recognized as a mainstream sport, which is great. I remember when the Fox stuff happened, and that was amazing. It was like, wow, this is, it's front page news now, And then to go from that to ESPN and just really feeling legitimate, it's been cool, man. It's been fun. And full disclosure, I feel like I've gotten a little lazier over the last couple years, which is why this conversation is going to be so much more interesting, because back then everybody was interesting, and I was following all, the undercards and the prelims, and, nowadays I feel like I've kind of settled in and become a lazy fan to where, I know all the big names, and I know everything they're doing, and I don't spend nearly as much time on, the newer guys, which is what used to be exciting, which is, why I'm a loyal, where my fandom started was with guys before they were champs and before they were stars,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll get into a little later, with our main event here. That's, started way back when.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
And, so this is, a fun thing to do now to try to get back to some of that.
Yeah, definitely love that. And something that, we talked about a little bit smaller names, but someone who's a pretty household name now is that last pay-per-view, Alex Pereira. He had a big matchup in that last pay-per-view, headlined another card. I mean, his activity has been absolutely insane in this past 2024 year. So you had that big fight against Khalil Roundtree. What have you seen from Alex Pereira and even Khalil Roundtree stepping up in a fight that some people didn't even think he belonged?
I don't know if I've seen anything new. Are you talking about what have I seen new from Alex Pereira, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say I really seen anything new from him. He's doing what he's always done. It's just it's taken that much longer to win me over. And it's mostly because coming up a guy that, again, being a huge fan of, the whole Izzy storyline and all that, it was so hard to get behind him just based on loyalty to Izzy, And now that we're past that, I think I've been able to let it go now and just really embrace him like this dude. It was hard to admit before. I was like, he's all right, and yeah, he's knocking guys out, but who cares, and anybody else, it would have been okay. But for some reason, I couldn't give him the credit that he was due. But now that he went and moved up into a division that needed that, because the light heavyweight division has been stale for a while now, Before that, the most interesting thing was waiting for John Jones to come back and get out of trouble so he can fight again. That was the most interesting thing. Then that went away, and now belts were just exchanging hands one after the other, and every time, that used to be the main thing you had to tune in for. And, sorry to say, the last couple of years when there was a big light heavyweight bout on, it was just like, all right, who's this guy, and like I said, John Jones left the division and just sucked all the wind out of the room, it wasn't doing anything. So that's fun to see. I'm definitely on board now. And I don't know if it's timing, like I said, moving to the light heavyweight division, or is it just that we're seeing more of who he is now? I don't know if I'm just paying attention more, or is he just, pulling back the curtain a little bit and showing that he's just a regular goofy guy. He's not just this scary Terminator, this emotionless, whatever. There's a lot going on there, and it's fun to watch. And so getting to know him in that way now definitely makes it a lot easier to support him in the cage now.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a fun guy to watch. And when you watch his performance, he's winning in such a fashion where it just seems like he's always one punch away. It's always that left hook. At any moment, Khalil Roundtree early in that fight was getting what he wanted. His striking was pure, and it kind of felt like Khalil Roundtree was in that fight to begin with. But it almost seemed like as if Pereira, that was the game plan. Let Roundtree get going early, but then once Roundtree started to fade off just a little bit, Pereira seemed to attack and be right on it.
Yeah. Minus getting clipped, because I don't think anybody plans on getting clipped like that. So that part of it,
of course,
yeah,
that was game plan. A little out of the game plan.
Yeah. But no, I agree. I think I don't even know though, because you can't really say across the board that he's a slow starter. It just depends on who he's up against, right? Because we saw what he did to what's his face. God, the only thing I could ever picture is, hopefully we don't really ever take off where this comes back. But I just can't ever stop thinking about Homeboy's tattoo on his chest that looks like Damani drew it 5 years ago, Golly, that's all I can remember for. But not that he's not good. Whatever. The last dude he knocked out.
Jamal Hill.
When he got, there you go. Blank. Yes, Jamal Hill. Even that was round one, right? If I remember correctly. Was that in the first? So, yeah, it was just, I don't know. It just seems like he just takes what he's given and he makes something out of it, And so, yeah, Khalil was coming on strong. I don't know if that was necessarily the game plan or he just couldn't find his openings yet. But, yeah, once he started getting loose in there, man, it was one-sided, and it was tough to see, especially for Khalil and following his story and all of that. And you can't not root for the guy, but again, it's kind of what you expected. If anything, I think we were all more surprised that he was able to clip Pereira in such a way.
Right.
Or Pereira, I always get, are we trying to do it like authentically, but anyway.
Of course, always.
Yeah. So it's just, lost my train of thought there, sorry. But yeah, so anyway, following his story, it's heartbreaking to see, but we've seen that before too, right? There's always going to be a heartbreaking loss, and you just hopefully it picks up and he comes back from that. It doesn't take away from his performance that night, which was still great. He was in there with one of the greatest. It's somebody that might be in our Hall of Fame sometime in the future, So we just got to see where that takes him. But, yeah, I think that kind of solidified his place in everybody's mind and hearts, as he definitely owns this division. When he moved up, there was a lot of talk of his size, but how was it going to translate? It was always said he was too big for the middleweight division anyway.
Oh yeah, he was huge. I mean, when he came in after the weight cuts on fight day, I mean, he was way bigger than any of the other competitors.
Yeah, and we kept seeing these pictures of him next to, at the time, he's a middleweight, next to current light heavyweights of the time, and he was massive.
Bigger.
The one that always stands out was the Reyes.
Right.
Yeah, just giant, right? And that dude, he's no small guy. So it's like, holy, you have that kind of comparison that you realize how big he is. It doesn't always necessarily translate, but in this case, it was beautiful, right? It's like he probably should have started there, but obviously without the Izzy storyline, I don't think he would have been propelled quite as quickly as he was. He needed that animosity and that, friction for, to get where he is today. So it's been a fun journey for sure.
Yeah, for sure. He's been a fun guy to watch. Now let's dig straight into this UFC 308 card. We've talked about some of the big names. Now let's talk about some names who maybe not are as household names. You have Bullet Shara Magomedov, and then you have Armen Petrosyan. That fight is super exciting. Want to hear what you saw. Again, two guys who are up and coming. Should be a really exciting fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Shara Magomedov, I mean, just with the last name like that, you automatically assume wrestling. You're like, this dude's taking people down, whooping their ass, and that's not what's happening at all, right? He's only 3 fights deep, and it's kind of hard to say. It seems like he's getting a little bit of traction here. It's kind of hard to say if it's, again, because of being a Dagestani and the last name and the whole connection and everything, I might be jumping in. Is there a connection? Because I'm actually unaware. Is there a connection to him and Khabib?
I'm also unaware. I know it's a Russian background. I know, but
yeah.
But as
he's
far as
Dagestani, right?
Correct, I believe so.
Let's just say he is. Okay, so he's the biggest Dagestani there is, and he's a striker, right? Which we don't really see that from guys in that camp or that region, at least, right? It's always talked about the wrestling. When you hear it come from people like DC, right? Daniel Cormier or Chael Sonnen or any of the big wrestlers of the past, and they always go on and on about the kind of wrestlers that part of the world produces. So just without knowing much about him, I just assumed, and so trying to play catch up on who is this guy. I've heard his name. I know the eyeball thing, and there's one gone, right? But, going back, it's like, he's a striker. Right. And not only that, he's a leggy striker. Don't know if that's a word, but it is now. Like, he uses legs a lot. There's a lot of kicks from weird angles, and he, almost presses forward with kicks, or uses that more so than his hands, right? And in the last fight, I heard a lot of the comments, going on and on about how he's been working on his takedown defense. So then I guess really that kind of answers it right there. Maybe he's not a part of Khabib's camp because that's, I don't want to say that's exclusively what they work on, but that's a big part of, what they bring to the table, right? So I can't imagine he's training with those guys and still barely learning his takedown defense. So
yeah, his
No, go ahead. I actually didn't have anything to follow up.
Yeah, his striking is super exciting to watch. Whenever, again, you think of a Magomedov, you think of Russian fighters. They do typically have that wrestling background, but his striking is so pure. You talked about the leg kicks, the body kicks, which only sets up for that head kick, and everything he does just seems so fluid. Everything he does is just very smooth. It's pure. It's something completely different than what you expect from other Russian background fighters. He's got quick hands. Everything he does just seems to be very smooth. But on the other hand, Armen Petrosyan is a guy he's a little more filled out, pretty big, solid guy, strong hands, also a striker as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And so I don't feel like I could fairly give a review of, hold on, backing up here. I don't feel like I could give an honest review of Armen Petrosyan because I haven't really followed up much of his fights. I know I've seen a couple, but I've never really dissected much of it. I can't even really tell you his fighting style, to be honest. So I'll let you fill me in on that. What's there to know about him?
So based off of what I've seen, I've seen him fight a couple times, and now rewatching it, big striker, again, heavy hands, loves to keep distance. It won't be a problem in this fight, but something that he has struggled with in the past is being taken down and held down. So again, we talked about it with Bullet Magomedov, it's going to be a lot of striking, so not necessarily worried about the takedown and being out grappled and struggling in the submission. He's been submitted once in his mixed martial arts career. So again, he's getting taken down. He is able to get held down, but great striking. When he's keeping distance, he has very strong hands. He has like that ability to, have that one punch knockout power. Very smooth. Again, strong hands. But that one spot he is missing in is that groundwork. So really exciting fight. So we're gonna get into picks later. So stay with us throughout as we break down these fights, and we're gonna make our picks later off into this podcast. We're gonna go through each fight in that main card, and then we're gonna do Sharp's picks. We're gonna keep up with it all podcasts long in different segments, and we'll see who has a better record at the end of the year, Siege. But let's go straight into names who are getting a little more popular. One, a newer guy, and then you have Dan Ige, who just stepping up in that Diego Lopez fight, just escalate his superstardom. But then you have Leroy Murphy, who is 6-0 in the UFC and also a very good striker.
Absolutely. And you see what Diego Lopez is doing out here now, so you can't really blame Dan Ige for going down the way he did. Last minute fight, if I remember correctly, right?
The day of, hours before.
It definitely makes a difference, right? There's some guys who end up pulling it off and it works out. And for both of these guys, they were both kind of in the fire at this point. It could have went either way, right? So you can't really blame him for that. But you see what he did to other guys like Andre Fili, who is a well-known striker, a well-rounded striker. He did lose before that to Bryce Mitchell, right? Yeah. He did lose to Bryce Mitchell. And so, he's kind of had an up and down, last few outings. And Leron Murphy, another guy again that I know just from the little research I've done, he's an up and comer. The most exciting thing is that he's undefeated. That's always exciting. Known for his hands too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
So that's going to be a good one. Again, I'm not overly familiar with Leron Murphy, but yeah, just from watching the build up, the embedded stuff and all that, and going into it, definitely excited to see that one.
Yeah, for sure. On one side you have Dan Ige, heavy hands, and I think a big part of this one is because when you look at the Miracle Murphy, the one thing that you've heard in different interviews and just watching his game is just like we saw in Petrosian, he has the ability to be taken down. He is a very pure striker, lots of low kicks, very active, but he's been taken down even in his 6 fights with the UFC, has shown the susceptibility to be taken down and held down throughout the rounds. But again, when he's back on his feet, his striking is he has nice combos. It's very boxing style, but he's mixed in leg kicks as his careers went on. So a very exciting fight and two kind of different matches. You have 2 strikers, but 2 different kind of style of strikers.
And where is he hailing from? Because I feel like there's been a few times I've heard him, and I was like, is this dude from somewhere else, or is he a local guy?
He's from England.
Okay, that's what it was, yeah. But I remember listening to him, and I was like, he sounds like what's our boy that just got beat up by Bilal?
Oh, Leon Edwards.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. It's late. Everybody's name is escaping me right now. Just like their faces are right here, but I can't do anything with that. So, yeah. There you go. So, yeah, very, very good fight.
And now we're going to go up in weight class, go to that light heavyweight division we talked about just a little bit earlier. You have Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Again, 2 strikers, 2 kind of different styles, but interested to see what you see here.
Yeah, so definitely like Magomed for this one. And it's weird to say that because he's not someone that moves the needle for me. And I don't know why that is. I've seen his fights, and he wins. Don't get me wrong, but he's just had some lackluster fights that are just kind of and the main one that comes to mind was him and the Polish Hammer. That was an okay one. I do know he took care of our boy. He did beat up Johnny Walker pretty bad, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah. They had back-to-back fights. The first one ended in no contest, and the second one he got a second-round knockout.
That was the weird one where Johnny Walker was acting like, "Oh no, I do want to fight now." Actually, no, hold on.
Right after he got called off. So right.
Yeah. That was a weird one. Again, being the light heavyweight division and not being as interesting, I don't feel like I have a great opinion on Alexander either. I mean, I know I've seen him, but nothing that left an impression on me. And just based on that alone, we're not doing picks yet, so I'm not going to pick anybody. But
there you go.
I just feel like Magomed is the guy to go with.
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, when you look at Magomed Ankalaev, heavy hands, he seems very calculated in there. You know, again, a guy with strong hands, and once you move up in weight classes, it's sometimes just easy to think that these guys have heavy hands, they just throw and first one to land wins. But not with Magomed Ankalaev. Very calculated. He keeps his distance well. He has a 75-inch reach versus 78 for Rakic. So Rakic does have the reach advantage just by a little bit. But with Rakic, I remember the first time he really caught my eye was against that Jimmy Manuwa. That head kick he threw knocked him out back in 2019. It was a first-round knockout, and it looked exactly like how Leon Edwards set it up when he knocked out Kamaru Usman. He threw a right, threw the left, and then the left head kick came in right behind it. Manuwa just dropped his hands enough, knocked him out. And since that fight back in 2019, he's kind of been on my radar because, I mean, when you have a knockout like that, it's hard for you not to want to watch this guy again. So, at that, again, both guys, very athletic. You know, you have guys who are 204 for Ankalaev and 206 for Rakic. Two bigger guys, but move very well and are very athletic for the weight class.
Yeah, which is always scary. When you see somebody that big moving that smoothly and slick, it's like, yeah, we've got something here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have Ankalaev, who's had, and Rakic, who have both had head kick knockouts, a front kick knockout for Ankalaev, and then that kick against Manuwa for Rakic that I just talked about. So I can't wait to do picks. I'm ready to get there, but got a couple more exciting fights to go. Talk about exciting fights, Siege. Let's get to that co-main event that a lot of people worried wouldn't happen. There was a couple they were worried about. You know, Hamzat Chimaev has been a little inactive, and then so it's been a question mark. But we're the day before. We look like we're gonna get that fight. It's gonna be Hamzat Chimaev taking on Robert the Reaper Whittaker. Thoughts on the co-main event?
And he made weight, right? And I think they said it was kind of last minute, but he made weight, 186, barely by the skin of his teeth. You know, but looked good doing it. Looked scary as all that, but I think anytime you see Chimaev walking around, he looks like a fairly scary guy, you know? Very interesting, tough fight to see because big fan of both. I've been a fan of, you know, Bobby Knuckles from way back when, you know, and fights like back-to-back fights with scary guys like Yoel Romero and a host of, I mean, name them, right? I mean, he's always come through with, you know, the exception of, you know, his few losses against guys, you know, who are up and come for the most part are up and coming champions and went on to become champions. So, you know, no love lost there, right? I mean, it's maybe deserved, but and the way he carries himself outside of fighting, like it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, two completely different people. So how can you not be a fan of Robert Whittaker? Like he just seems like the average goof, nerdy dude, you know. Then he gets in there and starts pounding his chest, and you're like, shit. You know, so yeah, man, love that fight. And Chimaev, I had this one written off. I was like, yeah, right, yeah, sure, he's gonna fight Robert Whittaker. Yeah, and you know, even with it being in Abu Dhabi, because we keep hearing about he can't go anywhere except for, you know, places like UAE and you know certain parts of the world. If I remember correctly, I thought I heard recently that he did an interview where he was asked directly, "Can you or can you not come to the U.S.?" And he was like, "I can." He's like, you know, just basically he was saying people are talking and they're trying to this and that, but he keeps not coming. So I don't know if he's just deflecting or if it's true or, you know. And I've heard people say that they're scared to give him top ranked contenders and make him a title contender because if he does do that and gets the belt, then we're kind of stuck with a champ that can only fight at certain times of the year, you know. And so I think that's a valid point to be made, but as fight fans, I don't think we really think that far through, right? We just want to see the best fights, and this is a great fight. Really excited to see this one. And yeah, it's just, we're not doing picks yet. So anyway, but yes, very excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that this fight was named officially a #1 contender fight. This fight is not for the belt. It's not the main event, but it will still be 5 rounds. So the winner of this potentially will go on to fight for the middleweight belt. So again, you
Which
have
would be
Robert.
great.
That would be exciting. You have Robert Whittaker, who's been there forever. You got something on your mind. You got to finish that thought.
So, what do we do with Sean Strickland in the meantime? Because Sean Strickland is still up there. He lost his belt, didn't get the immediate rematch. He's not signed to fight anybody right now, is he?
There's nothing official, but from what I've heard, that there's rumors around out in the air that he's rumored to be finally getting that rematch. I believe it's going to be happen. It would happen in the next year. So it would be Dricus Du Plessis fighting Sean Strickland. Not official, nothing signed yet. So we'll definitely have to come back for the next episode when we'll explain what the update is. But officially, I don't believe nothing has been signed.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's expressed no interest in fighting anybody but Du Plessis or whoever has the belt, right? He's kind of, throwing his weight around. He's like, look, I just lost the belt. I was a champ. I deserve a rematch, right? Because you have guys like this at the top of the middleweight division who very well should be fighting Sean Strickland if it's not, for the belt. And he's, not that he's a gatekeeper, but he's that guy and he's right there. And if Du Plessis has business elsewhere, and we see this sometimes, and I get it, at the end of the day, it's you have so much more to lose, by fighting a guy like this. And, you definitely won't get that automatic rematch. But I definitely don't want to see the Miocic effect, which is I'm just going to hang around for 2-3 years until I finally, till I could finally get what I want, And as a fan, that's not what you want to see. You want to see activity. You want to keep the momentum going, But I get it. He's playing it smart, But a fight between Whittaker and Strickland would be amazing. A fight between Strickland and anybody at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Strickland's another one of those that had to win me over. Like, I understood the brashness and all that, and it kind of seemed over the top, but whatever, he's doing what he's doing. But the fighting and that, a combination of that too won me over. So I want to see more from him. It's like we had all this activity coming up to the belt, and now he lost the belt, which was a great fight. It wasn't one-sided, so yes, he does deserve the rematch, but I think the simple fact that he was passed over in the meantime, let's keep active, right? Let's keep going. So anyway, went off on a tangent there. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard not to with these guys. These guys are really exciting. I know you're excited about it, but one fight that potentially I see you even being more excited about is this main event. Max Blessed Holloway gets a shot back at that featherweight championship, and he takes on Illia Matador Topuria. I know we've been talking about this fight for a lot, so I know you got a lot on your mind. What you got?
So, obviously, I'm going to start off with Max. Max is my guy. I choose Max. I'm even when it doesn't make sense. Max could be fighting at heavyweight tomorrow, and I'm choosing Max. I'm that much of a fan. I love this dude. I love everything about him. I think he's a true fighter through and through. There's no fluff. There's no, putting on a show for the crowd or whatever. A lot of times he doesn't have anything all that cool or exciting to say anyway. He's just being himself. But he does all his talking in the cage, and it's amazing to see. And I'm pretty sure I don't speak for myself when I say, I remember watching Max way back when. I remember the McGregor fight when he was up and coming, when he came in. I remember when he fought Cub Swanson, and it wasn't because I was a fan back then. It's just that he was fighting guys that I knew and that I followed or I liked or whatever. And, so he was always on my radar. But going back to what I started saying is I don't think I'm the only person that could feel this way. The Ricardo Lamas fight is what put him on the map for me. I remember watching that fight in real time, and by the end of that fight going, that's my guy. I couldn't really say that about anybody else at the time, but that was my guy. And since then, I've been hooked. I've been on the Blessed Express. Like that, yeah. I'm all for it.
Yeah, it seems like Max Holloway has just gained a following every single time he fights. For the newer crowd who are maybe watching UFC and maybe came around COVID time, which a lot of people joined in. Some people came in this past couple years. Some people very new to it. It could be the Calvin Kattar fight that people started joining in when he was I'm the best boxer and doing no looks punch. And Calvin Kattar, a guy who's known for his striking, and for him to do that to a guy like that, it's unbelievable. And I can say for for my experience when I was up in Boston, I was around people who were new to the fight game and still learning. And the way, and it was UFC 300, right? It had all that hype to it. And then for him to put on a performance like that against Justin, the highlight Gaethje, I mean, it was mind blowing. It was unbelievable. I mean, how can you not be a fan of this guy? This guy is everyone's fan favorite.
Yeah.
But he's not just taking on a nobody. He is taking on the champ, Illia Topuria, which could cause some issues for him.
Right. It just I can't let it out. I just okay, yes, I do see the Topuria thing, and it is great, and you can't take anything away from him. And I know that the easiest thing to do is say, well, Volkanovski beat Holloway, Topuria beat Volkanovski, so it's obvious, and we all know it doesn't work like that. And so he's done some great things, and I hope I'm not eating crud later, but it wasn't Holloway. And we see what Holloway does. I get it. He lost to Volkanovski 3 times, but, maybe only once. But whatever. He did lose to Volkanovski. Fine.
He did.
But I feel like unless you're a Volkanovski, or Dustin Poirier, sort of, but that's kind of different. Unless you're a Volkanovski at this stage of the game, you're not beating a Max Holloway. I don't care who you are. I don't care what weight division you are. And again, we saw it with Justin Gaethje. Yes, that wasn't Holloway's first foray into the lightweight division, but this was the first time that it was a full camp. He had, full time to prepare and get his weight up and do all of that. And we saw what that looked like. And we already know what he does at the featherweight division. I get it. Topuria knocks people out, and that's exciting. I'm here for that. I mean, who is it, right? But this is Max Holloway, and it's not like he hasn't fought super dangerous guys before. I mean, it's easy to discount Jose Aldo now, looking at him over the past however many years, but we got to remember who Aldo was, even if he got knocked out by McGregor right before that or a little before that. This is still Jose Aldo, and for him to piece up Aldo the way he did, and all these other guys, it's just I feel like people keep acting like Topuria is going to walk through him, which is such a weird thing to say after what he just did to Gaethje and what he's continuously done. Even in his losses, they weren't one-sided, minus that one Volkanovski fight. But besides all that, right. Well, but it's Max Holloway, dude, and he shows up every single time. And you have a dude that's going to stand there and bang. What's interesting that Damani asked me, Damani Sharp, another Sharp, my son, your nephew, which I guess I hadn't really considered. He goes, but what happens if Topuria takes Holloway to the ground? And I guess I hadn't really considered that. I don't think that's going to happen, but it is an interesting dynamic. I don't feel like Holloway's in a lot of trouble on the ground, but that's not his space. But I can't. Is it even really Topuria's space? Like, yeah, I understand he has a jiu-jitsu background and he does have a submission. Does he have one submission win in the UFC or 2? In the UFC?
In the UFC, I have to go back and check, but I know he has 8 submissions.
Right.
In his 15-0 career, so he's got 5 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission. Okay,
I just don't know. I know of the one because I saw that fight, and I don't even remember who it was against at this point. I remember,
it was, and to make it more impressive, it was against Bryce Mitchell. That's who he got the submission.
Right. Against. Yeah, fair enough. Which is good, but I don't know if that's his game plan. I think there's a lot of things that are factoring in here. He's promised a lot already, so he's already kind of put his foot in his mouth. He's talking about knocking him out. He's talking about doing all these things, and I get it. Once you get in there, it's by any means necessary. So shift away, and you feel like you have an advantage. That's where it's going to go. I feel like he's promised a lot. I don't feel like we've really seen that much from him in these last however many fights. I don't think that, but it is an interesting thing that I haven't even considered. And I'm trying to remember because doesn't Holloway has a couple submissions too? Doesn't he? Didn't he submit featherweight, went up to lightweight, was a champ for a little bit.
I know Holloway has
with the tongue, all that. What's his name? Golly, I can't remember by his name right now.
I'm not sure what that was, but he does have 2 submissions.
Oliveira. You know, Oliveira does
Yes.
the weird
Wow.
tongue thing. Yeah, I
Wow.
wasn't
I didn't
just
know
being
what
a
that was, but
weirdo.
I
But
get
he
it now.
does that. You know what I'm talking about. I don't know
For
why
sure.
he does it, but he does it.
For
But
sure.
he has a submission win over Oliveira, so he has, you know, some submission wins in there too, you know. But we're here for Max's striking, and I feel like Topuria has a chip on his shoulder. He has something to prove. That's what Max is known for, and I think he's going to go out there and try to beat Max at his game, which is still kind of Topuria's game, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, Illia Topuria, he's fun to watch. His strike, and we keep talking about guys having pure striking, but this card just has it. This card, when you watch Illia Topuria, his striking,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very short combos. I mean, his combinations are nice. He really puts he sets things. Yeah, he sets things up for later in the fight. You saw what he did to Volkanovski. Was it the same Volk? You know, he's going after the Islam thing, and he's fighting back to back to back. A lot of questions there, but one quick question, and I want a quick answer for you before we move on. Is I don't know if you heard, but Topuria has been saying that he wants to meet Holloway in the middle of the octagon in the first 10 seconds. So I just want to hear, do you think, I'm not what would happen, but do you think that actually happens, and do you think he means it? Just a real quick answer.
So, no, I don't. Well, no, I take it back. Yes, I do think he means it. I don't like it. I think, and I've been feeling this way about him for a while now. It's just funny that this is the narrative now. You've heard the copycat narrative about him. And I thought I was the only one. Like it struck the first time it struck me was when they were doing the press conference and he grabbed Volk's belt, and it was just, ugh. It was just, ugh. Like it wasn't original. It's been done. It was so obvious. You could tell it wasn't off the cuff and this feels right. It's like I saw that. That was cool. Let me recreate that. And it was just, get that out of here. And now to act like he's gonna stand there and he's gonna point at the ground. Now like. Do your own thing. Find your own niche. You know, like you're a great fighter. You're the champion. Find your way. Make your own moments. You know, it's just that's Holloway's thing. Like that's and not even so much as thing, but these were like big moments that made Holloway who he is and why we absolutely adore him now. And for him to try to jump in and steal some of that thunder is just kind of like it didn't excite me. It wasn't like, oh, they're gonna meet in the middle. And I was like, dude, that's whack. That's lame. Like, just anyway, that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, and Holloway did comment on. He said that I'm not. He was kind of like that's kind of stupid. I'm not dumb. I'm not like that doesn't make sense. So he's kind of shut it down originally. So not sure how that'll play out. So but let's move on here. I want to ask him a couple rapid fire questions just real quick. So you have a couple undefeated guys. You have Topuria, you have Magomedov, you have Murphy, and you have Chimaev. You have a couple undefeated guys.
Okay.
You had to pick which guy gets a 1 on that losing board in that main card. You have a couple in the main card. Which guy has the most chance of getting that 1?
If I'm putting my money on it, and let me go back and look at all these fellas again, give them a long hard look. If I have to put my money on it, and it sounds terrible because I'm starting this whole thing off by saying I'm the biggest Max fan, but that's the one I wouldn't put money on. So I'm not going to say Topuria.
Okay.
I'm not going to say Chimaev. If I had to put money on it, I would say Ankalaev's O is going to go.
Okay, hot take.
I feel like that's a little bit more of a toss-up than some of the other guys. Not that they necessarily have it in the bag, but yeah, I feel like that's a little bit more of a toss-up.
Okay, and the next question: who has the most to lose? So who needs this win the most?
Period. Undefeated or not?
Like undefeated or not? And as far as this whole main card, who you think if they drop this fight, I mean their whole career could go a different direction.
Ige, right? Because he's kind of bouncing back and forth between the loss and win column. I would say Ige. I feel like he has the most, or at least the most to prove.
Okay, and then besides the main event and co-main,
who's your pick?
So for my pick for the first one, who's gonna has the biggest chance to get that first loss? I'm gonna have to go with the England boy, with the Miracle Murphy. Just because of his ability to be taken down, and you have Dan Ige, who has a bunch of submissions on his record. He's been able to get it done a lot. So if I'm Ige, I would expect him to have a lot of takedowns early And don't, because Ige's striking is great. I think he can hang with the best of them. I mean, you look at his record, and he's fought the best of them. He's done it. He's been there. But to me, when you have that kind of submission background, you have that grappling background, and then versus a guy who doesn't, I feel like that could open up a lot of things. And then, second, I think it would. It's a lot of question marks because the reason, if you say biggest, it could be Holloway, because if he loses, what happens to him in featherweight? But then, in all reality, he was just moved up to number 5 on lightweight, so his career wouldn't be too altering.
Right, so, right, because we're still going to tune in for that. Like, his fan base is set. He's not going anywhere, and, and we've seen it time and time again. He's had some tragic losses, and, none of his numbers dwindled down necessarily, right? We were still behind him, rah, so, yeah.
And then, so the answer for me would have to be, unfortunately, Robert Whittaker. I feel like whenever you talk about Whittaker, his career has been so long, but for him to get back to that championship route, he would need a win against a guy like Khamzat Chimaev. And not to say that if he loses that he would never be able to get back, but that road, I mean, as you know, we've seen it with fighters that, have a couple of age under them. You have him, he's getting up there. He's had a long career. So, if he loses this fight, what does that do to his career? But so those are the questions I had for you. Siege, I think it's time. Let's get straight into these picks. Let's wrap it up with some picks here. We'll start. We'll start from the first fight of the main card. Break it down for us, a short breakdown, and then who you got and how.
All right, so I got Shara. We're starting at the bottom, right?
Yep. All right.
Shara by head kick. He's just throwing these legs out there wildly and loosely, and they look pretty, and they seem to find their target more often than not. So I'm just going to throw it out there and say, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to say a highlight reel finish, but I'm going to go head kick. Okay. Why not?
Yep.
On the feet, head kick.
Okay, I like it. I'm going to go that same direction. I'm gonna go Shara. His striking seems to be pure, and he seems to be an exciting guy. And I think that constant pressure that he's going to have that entire fight, I think he's just going to be a little bit too much. So I have him keeping that undefeated record and move in to a higher class into his next fight. All right? So hit us up with the next one.
Okay. We're on board. All right, so Liron Murphy and Dan Ige. Again, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say, again, I think he has more to lose. That was my opinion, so I'm going to go with Dan Ige on this. I think he's a little hungrier, and I think he wants it. I think he's that last loss stung him a little bit, sometimes losses can affect guys in a real bad way. I don't think that was his case. I think he gave himself a little grace in that one. He realizes, he was just throwing it up, and we're just going to see what happens. And I think he's going to come in here hungry, and I think he's going to get it done.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'm going that same route. So we're 2 for 2 on the same picks here.
Okay.
And it's just because of that background thing he has, and both guys are going to come in hungry. But that Danny Ige seems could have a chip on his shoulder, and I think stylistically, with the way he matches up against a striker in Murphy who struggles with the takedown early. So, but I expect Murphy to have a better takedown defense, but his takedown defense percentage is on the lower end. So I'm gonna have to go Danny Ige as well.
Okay. Good. All right, moving up, let's go to light heavyweight. So Magomed, which again, this makes no sense because I just picked him to lose if I had to put my money on it. And I don't know what I'm doing here because then I just did not pick Liron Murphy, but I just said he's going to lose. Anyway, we're going to disregard all of that, okay?
Right.
I'm going with Magomed on this one. And really more than anything, just out of ignorance, I'm more familiar with Magomed, and I know what he does, and I've seen him, even if it's not that exciting. I expect him to be dominant, But, I'm going to pick Magomed in that one. I think he's going to do a little bit of everything everywhere. I think he's going to take him down. I think he's going to stand with him when he needs to. I think he's a well-rounded fighter, and I think he gets done. I'm not overly excited about it, so I see it going to a decision.
Yeah, he does have a lot of decisions on his card, and it's a tough one. This one was a tough one for me to pick. Rakic, I really like the way he sets up his striking. I really like the fluidity of Magomed Ankalaev. So I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but I have to agree with you. I'm gonna go Magomed as well. I think his strike is going to be a lot. I think he's going to be too calculated, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rockets catches him. So, I mean, I was really on the fence about this one, but I'm gonna have to go Magomed.
Good. All right.
All right, so
3 for 3.
3 for 3, but we could differ here in this co-main. Here we go.
I don't know. So co-main event: Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. I'm not picking with my heart. I'm just picking with my brain, and I don't think you bet against Khamzat. I just don't think you can. You see what he does. It doesn't matter what weight division he's doing it. It never looks close. I mean, we see what he did to Usman. Granted, Usman came off of 2 losses. It's still Usman, and so that doesn't take away from it. And it doesn't matter who the guy faces. You know, it looks like that time and time again. It just seems like he's leagues above everybody else. Hurts me to say it. Absolutely love Robert Whittaker. And I hope I'm wrong. To God, I hope I'm wrong, because Robert Whittaker does what he does. And there's been big, scary guys he's come up against. We saw what he did to Paulo Costa. I thought that was going to be a closer fight, and that was an amazing fight. We saw what he did to Marvin Vettori. What he did to Yoel Romero twice. I mean, the dude is amazing. Like I said, definitely a future Hall of Famer. I just think at this point of the game, and with what Khamzat brings to the table, I don't think Khamzat's going to mess around. I don't think he's going to try to play Robert's game. You know, I think he's going to go straight to his legs, take him down, dominate, and it's going to be terrible to see. I hope I'm wrong, but I would have to pick Khamzat in that one.
Yeah, can't blame you there. Khamzat is a guy who's very well-rounded. But Siege, I'm going to differ with you here. I have a little bit of a different opinion. You know, the last true middleweight that Chimaev fought was Gerald Mercer. He fought Gilbert Burns, who, again, not a natural middleweight. And I think whenever you saw him take that jump in competition, it just seemed like he struggled a little bit with it. So you have Gilbert Burns, who that fight was unbelievable. That was the first time we ever saw Chimaev really struggle even a little bit. Other than that, it's been looking too easy for him. And then you have him fight against Usman. But, again, that was, like you mentioned, Usman was a little bit at a different point in his career. So I just see it going. It could go a different way. And Kevin Holland, when he beat Kevin Holland, that fight got switched last minute. So if you're Kevin Holland and you're not preparing for the style of Chimaev, then it made it tough. So I'm gonna go Whittaker here. I think he's gonna be able to withstand the pressure that Chimaev withstands. So I'm gonna differ with you here. We got a different one here, season that co-main. But
got a question for you. So are you putting it down to the size difference, or the potential size difference, or the skill level? What are you attributing his loss to?
I think it's going to be tough, guys. You can't say it's skill level, because Chimaev is so well-rounded, you know, and Whittaker's great. Whittaker's great, but it's hard to say, like, oh, yeah, Whittaker just absolutely beats him. But Whittaker, his groundwork is great, too. He's 5-1 in submissions, so he's not just getting submitted, like, left and right. His striking's very good, and so he's like, his size is pretty big. He's a bulky guy. You know, he's not the tallest. He's going to be staying at 6 foot to Chimaev's 6'2", so a little bit shorter. And
he's not a very big middleweight either, because remember, he started his career in the UFC as a welterweight.
Correct.
And he didn't look a whole lot different than he does now, and that's when he really realized his full potential. It was obvious. He moved up to middleweight, and he just started taking off, right? And he just started going. So, yeah, I don't know if I would give him the size. He definitely has experience. That's for damn sure. He has the experience. We know he has the cardio. But we've seen him get touched before too, and that's always scary. It's almost like guys have a certain look that overcomes them when they get touched, and Robert Whittaker has that. You know, like he gets touched, and it's like, oh, not that he's been through those tough times before. Have we seen him face someone with a ground game such as Chimaev has? Because the two people that you mentioned that he had issues with somewhat have notable ground games, right? Like Gilbert Burns is a beast on the ground. Right. So he still had his way with Burns to an extent, but it was definitely a competitive fight. And it definitely was more competitive when they were on the feet. That's when things were, you know, and then it went to the ground and he was on top, but it wasn't one-sided like we normally see. And then Usman, even if his confidence was raw, because definitely getting knocked out, and then that wasn't the same Usman the same time he fought Edwards. The confidence definitely plays a huge factor, but he's still a wrestler at heart. And I just don't know if Robert Whittaker has the pedigree to deal or to slow down Chimaev in that way, you know? And again, I hope you're right. I hope you're right because I love Robert Whittaker, but man, I don't know.
It's gonna be a tough one, but I'm not sure if the viewers or I know who you're gonna go for this main event, but it's gonna be Max Holloway taking on Illia Topuria for that featherweight belt. Siege, I'm not sure if you've talked about it very much, but please let us know in brief words who you have in this main event.
Let me think. Holloway. Come on, man. It's gonna be Max. The Blessed Express is not stopping here. All right, we're gonna keep on trucking on through. What does the Express do? It's a train. Choo-choos. All right, that's not cool. Anyway, it's not stopping. That's the main point. Yeah, we're going. I'm going all the way. It's a toss-up. I get it. Ilya is very dangerous. I can't lose faith in Max. He pulls it out every time somehow, unless it's a Volkanovski. He pulls it off. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it seemed to be. And when you look at Topuria, though, it does resemble Volkanovski, a guy who's a little bit shorter, quicker strikes. You know, Holloway's going to have that reach advantage. But it just seems like, you know,
and he's got the leg kicks. Give him that. Right. He's got the leg kicks. They're quick, and Max is known to leave that leg out there. He somehow weathers it. You don't really see it. You know, he switches stances, but you don't really see it debilitate him too much. So, but he is known to leave his leg out there. So we got to see that. I'm sure that's going to be a target, and it's going to get chewed up. But man, it's Max, dude. Come on.
Yeah,
it's Max.
Expect Topuria to have those low leg kicks early to try to break down the lead leg of Max Holloway. You saw Topuria use it in all of his other fights. And that's how Volkanovski got to Holloway, just forced him to switch stances. But a quick note is, when you watch Topuria fight, anytime the fighter he was fighting switched to southpaw, he seemed to struggle just a little bit more. And Holloway can switch stances, so we'll see if he implements that at all. But
and
with that being said,
he's fluid both ways. I mean, he looks just as good orthodox as he's done unorthodox. Like, he's great. You know, he could throw him from either which way, so yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to implement that in there.
So I'm gonna have to go with Max Holloway. Gonna have to go with him. So we're gonna agree on 4-1.
Smart.
This doesn't happen a lot. You know, a lot of times we disagree on fights and we don't know which way it's gonna go, and then we get in little arguments and we get in debates. But on this card, we seem to agree a little bit more. That's not too common.
Most part.
So we can't expect this for the other segments. But this one went pretty smoothly here. But gonna have to go with Max Holloway. I mean, with that chin he has, you know, only getting knocked down once by Gaethje in UFC 300, and that's Justin Gaethje. So I just don't see it happening here, and I think he's gonna be hungry because he knows that, you know, if he were to drop one here against Topuria, what does his featherweight career look like? So that's gonna do it. And so Siege, just real quick, I want you to hear one final last comment. What do you expect out of this whole card, and how are we feeling about it? Just in quick words.
Excited about it. I'm excited about the fact that it's, for one, happening in the middle of the day, so I won't need a cup of coffee at 1 o'clock just to stay up, because as much as I love these fights, I'm getting older. I'm struggling to stay up through the, you know, co-main and main event. I'm just there, you know, just trying my best. So I'm excited about that, and it's going to be a good card, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anytime my boy Max is at the top of the bill, I'm expecting fireworks. So
it's going to be exciting. You can't miss it. And again, if you guys weren't aware, just as we had just alluded to, the first fight, the prelims, are going to start at 9 a.m. Central Time.
Yep.
The main card will be at 1 o'clock Central Time. So please do not miss it. It happens sometimes when it's in Abu Dhabi. You may think the card's going to start at 9 Central Time, but it doesn't happen that way, and you miss the whole card. I know it's happened to you, Siege. It's happened to me as well. So
you're calling me like, holy shit. I'm like, what happened? Who, where? And I've definitely been there. I'm at Walmart or something getting groceries, and I'm like, the whole card is over now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the whole thing's over. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure to, thank you for joining us in this session. Hopefully we got to give you guys a little bit of breakdown. So if you're new to the UFC, you kind of have an idea of what to expect from this main card. Or if, you're a UFC fan and you've been a UFC fan for a long time, let us know in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree with any of our takes? Do you have it going any which way in our picks? So please, let us know in the comments. This card's going to be so stacked. CJ, thank you so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun getting to talk and break down UFC fights.
It was.
So it was a
Yes,
great time.
brother.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. This will what the segments will look like going forward with the UFC. Just breaking down the main card, giving you guys a little bit of an emphasis on that. Thank you for joining Sharp Segments UFC edition. We'll be coming back soon to break down baseball and this World Series coming up, as well as the NFL season coming up right after that. Drop a like, subscribe, let us know what you guys want to see next. It's been Nico Sharp, CJ Sharp here on Sharp Segments.
Thank you, brother.